Well, Mr. Braswell, welcome back. We are never going to miss a segment of Tech Talk. We're so thrilled to have you.
Oh, well, thanks, Jimmy Max. Great to be here. One way or the other, Tech Talk with TMC. I understand you're down in Texas.
Yeah, we actually have made our way to TXTA out in Austin.
We're calling it Tex Talk today.
We're calling it Text Talk today, by the way, Robert. You brought along a guest as the party continues. Tell us a little bit about who you brought, what you're going to be talking about today after you do your standard operational procedure.
Well, yeah, sure. Well, this week we're pleased to welcome back to the program Kevin Otto, who's an expert with many, many years of experience in engine and powertrain issues. He spent just about 40 years at Cummins, and he's now the electrification technical lead for the North American Council for Freight Efficiency. You know them better as NACFE. Kevin is a longtime TMC member. He's been very active in our S3 engine and S11 sustainability and environmental technology study groups, having chaired a number of task forces dealing with these issues. He's one of our TMC Silver Spark Plug recipients. That's our council's highest honor. And he's as well a recognized associate. And we're very pleased you can join us today for show 999. That's our odometer show. We're going to be talking about what are the latest developments in terms of current and future powertrain developments. But before we get started, as you insinuated, as you know, each week we like to make a special offer. This week it is our TMC Fuel Economy Digest. It covers speccing, testing, and operating for maximum fuel economy, and you can get it for the special price of just $25 plus shipping and handling. To order, call us at 703-838-1763 or shoot us an email at tmc@trucking.org. Mention Radio Nemo. You can get it for that special price. Also, if you're an owner-operator or a small fleet and you got 100 or fewer power units, we would love to have you as a member of TMC. You can join for the discounted annual dues of just $150 and do that today. You'll get our 2-volume recommended practices manual and many other good benefits, too, that cover just about everything you can think of when it comes to commercial vehicle maintenance and repair. And as always, a reminder, listeners, at the top of the show that any TMC recommended practices we discuss reflect the consensus of our members. We offer them as recommendations only, and everyone must first determine for themselves if they are safe and appropriate for their operation. Please remember that TMC doesn't endorse any product, person, or service, and the opinions expressed on the show are those of the individual and not necessarily the opinion of his or her company, nor TMC, unless stated otherwise. And with all that out of the way, please welcome to the program Kevin Otto. Good morning, Kevin. Do we have Kevin?
We have Kevin. Hold on one second here. Let me just make sure Madison with a T has got our friend Kevin all locked up and loaded.
Okay.
I'm telling you, it is our first remote broadcast, Robert, and the fact that we're even on the air is kind of a remarkable miracle to have you here with us. Madison, where are we with Kevin?
Stand by. I'm trying to figure that out.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll get him on in a second, Robert. Robert, I don't know, have you ever been to TXTA?
No, I haven't.
It's there's so many trucking conferences that we get a chance to go to, and all of them are wonderful. We get a chance to talk to a lot of folks. Like everything else, it feels bigger, and that is not a shot at anybody else, but the stakes are so high here in regards to that. Rebecca Brewster and I have a joke that trucking is a tale of two cities, and we're not talking about Washington, D.C. So much of what is important that happens in trucking either comes out of Sacramento or Austin. And so one of the big reasons we actually make our way down here is because we feel like in some ways it's one of the 3-4 great trucking centers of the universe. You might make a case that Columbus is as well. And I was kind of curious as we get Kevin Otto on the line, if it's at all possible, if you can think of places where you feel like the real trucking action is happening, like the center of the trucking universe, those kind of worlds.
Well, a lot of trucking happens in the state of Arkansas. Not to belittle the folks in Texas, but a lot of high density of fleets there in Arkansas, your neighbors to the east.
That's a really great point. I got a couple of friends of mine out there, Gina Mullinax and Dave Harrison, who are regular listeners who probably were screaming Arkansas at their radios or whatever platforms they're listening to as we make our way kind of, down the road here. They're probably just bellowing towards that. I didn't think about that. We were talking the other day, too. I've always said that there's a real kind of trucking nexus between northern Mississippi, Arkansas, and the Memphis area as well, too, because of all of those crossovers and those points. So we're always trying to find places places where we can kind of go that kind of put us in the middle of trucking that aren't just the obvious ones. And I didn't even think about Arkansas really as being kind of the center of it all in regards to policy and all that. That makes a lot of sense. And by the way, before we get our next guest on here, Robert, where are you headed next? Where's your next big destination?
Well, our next big destination is going to be in Raleigh, North Carolina for our 2025 fall meeting and national technician skills competitions. That's coming up in September, just about a month and a half away. We'll be meeting down there the 14th through the 18th of the month.
Yeah, and we're always kind of trying to find a way to get to that. We actually might be going to the National Truck Driving Championships. By the way, can I get a phone number from Kevin because he's not not on the air. Well, do me a favor, Robert, because you were the only one listed on the lineup today. Can you actually send me a text or somebody a text? We don't want to give Kevin's phone number away on the air. That's what happened today.
I sent it to the producer's line, so the producer email should have it.
Okay. We're gonna. All right, Robert. She's going to pick up with you, and can you do that, Madison? Can you pick up with Robert so we can get that number and not put it on the air rather than you scrambling through emails? Is that possible?
Hey there, guys. What do you want me to pull the number?
We'll
from
let
the
Madison
email?
kind of take care of that really quickly here. Hey, guys, just to let you know, we're broadcasting live from TXTA over here in the great state of Austin, Texas, making that happen. There was by the way, in the calendar to let you know, Kevin's name was listed, but there was no phone number for that. But I'm sure it's over in the producer's email. We actually also have Dre over at Sturgis today.
I know. I'm hoping. I told him. I was like, I hope he will check in because I saw a few pictures, but we need. There's Chatter's heading up to Sturgis. There's a couple of other our drivers and our listeners who I know are heading over there. So I hope at some point this week, Dre is going to call in and do a broadcasting live or checking in live from Sturgis conversation. I sang up there a very, very long time ago, but haven't been since. But it is quite the wild spectacle. But a lot of truck drivers attend that event. So I hope he.
Yeah, the motorcycle community is really, really big, and a lot of people were very, very excited, of course, about that as well. It's funny because every year I hear about Sturgis, and every year we get closer and closer to broadcasting from there. So Dre will get a real sense of what the ground there is like and probably be scoping out some places. If you guys have ever been to Sturgis and would like to put that into the chat, we would love to hear from you guys.
There's a couple cool, or a lot of cool, but little cool saloons that that I know a lot of people from Nashville head up to go play at. So it would be cool to maybe broadcast from one of those little saloons, play some music later that night. Meet our listeners. It actually might be, it's far. I know it's not easy to get to, but it could be a really cool rally point, emphasis on rally point to get everybody together. So if you're in the chat, listening or watching, make sure you head on over there. Tell us if you're going to Sturgis, if you have been to Sturgis, do you want to go to Sturgis, all of the above, and maybe where you would like to see us broadcast. That could be cool. We have Tech Talk coming up. Robert Braswell's on the line. We're getting his guest, Kevin, on the phone. And then we will head back live. We are broadcasting live from a TXTA 2025 Summer Conference. Joining us at 9 o'clock, we'll have all the guests filtering in that are going to be here speaking. John Esparza, who is the head of this fine establishment, will be checking with. I think he's our very first guest actually today, so that'll be fun to get to catch up with him, Jim.
Yeah, and one of the other things too is since our good friend Robert is here, and we actually might let this spill over into the next part of the segment before we get our next guest on the air. By the way, I do have a number for you, by the way, Madison, that I am going to send you over if you don't have it. Oh, we are ready?
Yeah,
We're good to go? Hey, is Kevin on here? We got a Kevin? Do I have a Kevin Otto in the house?
I'm here.
Hey,
I'm here.
Kevin Otto. Okay, so here's Robert. Here's Kevin Otto. Robert, welcome to our first live broadcast from remote location. I will let you take it away from here. Thank you for your patience, Robert.
Well, thanks, Jimmy Max. So, again, we're welcoming Kevin Otto here. He was formerly with Cummins. Now he's with NACFE. He's the lead electrification person there at NACFE. And we're going to be talking a little bit about current and future trends for advanced powertrains. Welcome to the program, Kevin.
Thanks, Robert. Good morning.
So, there's a lot of things been happening in the news that have dealt with the politics of environmental and sustainability technologies. Just today, as a matter of fact, we saw a news item about EPA's intention to rethink its endangerment finding. And, this and other things that are happening in California and other places across the United States are kind of, rolling back maybe the technological pathways that we thought were pretty much set in stone when it came to going from phase 2 greenhouse gas to phase 3 greenhouse gas. But that being said, we're not even sure they're going to be regulating greenhouse gas now. How is all this, throwing a wrench into the works when it comes to advanced powertrain technologies?
Well, certainly, Robert, there's a lot of different technologies out there, from advanced diesel technologies to renewable diesel to natural gas and renewable natural gas, electric, hydrogen. There's all kinds of new technologies that are being worked on, many of which are pretty much ready, at least ready enough from a technical standpoint to go into production. They may not be ready from a business standpoint yet. But
that's a big difference, too. That makes a big difference.
Exactly. Because that's exactly right. Because, it has to be a good business proposition before anybody's going to do it, right, in any kind of volume. So the rollback of the rules, it's interesting because the United States is making these moves from a rule standpoint. I don't know that California is going to go down easy on things like this, number one, but the rest of the world still has a bunch of regulations out there as well that are similar. And so, as the companies that manufacture these vehicles and the components in the vehicles move forward, they're going to have to serve the whole world. They don't just serve the United States, although the United States is obviously the biggest market in most cases. So, but in that case, the manufacturers have got to figure out how they're going to distribute their resources to satisfy all those clients as opposed to just the United States. So,
well, it's a big gamble, isn't it? So a manufacturer, let's just say that the phase 3 is suspended for whatever reason, and the manufacturers are free to continue to manufacture phase 2 vehicles for the indefinite future. Let's say 2, 3, 4, 5 years. Maybe they choose to do that. Maybe they don't. It takes a long time to get a technology pathway established from drawing board to production line. And, they're already probably more than halfway into that cycle, I would think, for these phase 3 vehicles. Do they just keep on keeping on and put those phase 3 vehicles out? And then what happens if you have one of them kind of breaking ranks, keeping making the phase 2? Then it sets up sort of a contest there, for lack of a better word. Which one's going to win out? It really is quite a gamble.
It is a big gamble from a business standpoint for these corporations that are building these devices, the big vehicles, the components that go into them, and that kind of thing. So I think in many ways some of these rule changes are adding more uncertainty to the market than was there before. One of the things the companies are always screaming for is having more stability in the regulations, so they know exactly what to target, given their development times may be 5 to 7 years. So for the really sophisticated stuff. Go ahead, Robert.
Stability in the regulations and uniformity in the regulations, because we don't want to be having boutique standards for a given state. California always seems to come to mind first, but there's 13, 14 states that kind of follow the California standards that, assuming that waivers are permitted and so forth. So having that kind of a boutique approach, a patchwork quilt approach to emissions regulations doesn't really do anybody any good, I would think.
That's right. It reduces the volume of any one given product. And so the gains that you can make on production of using common components across a large variety of products gets a lot harder as those regulations get more scattered and more patchwork, like you were talking about. So it means it's harder to keep costs under control.
There's the other side of the coin, too. What about the early adopter fleets that were trying these technologies out before everybody else does? They're on the far end of the bell curve. And a lot of this was, of course, directed towards electric vehicle technology, whether it's a battery electric vehicle or some sort of hybrid technology. It's almost as if you leaped a little too soon, maybe, and maybe you're paying the penalty for it. If you could look at it that way, anyway.
Well, certainly they might be, depending on the incentive structure that they might have had when they purchased those vehicles. They're getting help from places like the federal government or the state government or even local governments to finance some of the things that they're doing. If that goes away, clearly that could put them in some profitability issues with those particular vehicles. But if the incentives continue, it may not be. It'll be worth them getting the experience with those new technologies because they eventually will make it to marketplace. So.
But the way the winds are blowing in the political climate, at least at the federal level, I don't know if those incentives may be there, they may not be there. So it is a big risk, certainly. So with that being said, we've been talking a lot about battery electric vehicle kind of being the one that sort of is the wind vane blowing the other way. It seems like the industry is moving headlong into a battery electric situation, even perhaps for long haul. But there was always concern whether long haul was well suited or ready for a battery electric vehicle solution. But maybe, perhaps, and we can talk about this for a minute, maybe the pause in adoption could help mature the technology to the point that, let's say 5 years from now, maybe it's further along and maybe it's more cost effective, has a better return on investment for the fleets that need to use this technology. Because you pointed out, a lot of this is business decision. If you can't make a profit or make business sense with these technologies, it's just not going to fly.
That's exactly right. I mean, ultimately, both the suppliers to the industry, the vehicle manufacturers, and the people that are operating these vehicles, they all have to make a profit or they're not going to stay in business. So that means that the incentive structures, the tax structures, and all the other costs involved in operating each one of those businesses has to add up to a point where they're making profits, or it's just not going to be attractive for them to be in the business. Now, the point you make about technologies evolving, particularly like the battery electric, as you mentioned just now, there is some evolution in that marketplace, and you've seen it in automobiles over the last few years, and you see a lot more volume of that out there now. And the lighter duty stuff is that lighter duty vehicles are much closer to being cost parity with their internal combustion engine counterparts. But as you get bigger and bigger, go into those class 6, 7, 8 kinds of vehicles, it's a lot harder to get those costs in the same range so that they make sense. So you can get a total cost of ownership for, say, a delivery van, get that an awful lot closer than you can, say, a class 7 or 8, a day cab kind of vehicle. So,
well, when it comes to determining whether or not that the vehicles are going to have a solid return on investment, whether they meet the parity in terms of efficiency, economics, and environmental performance, the proof's in the pudding. And I know you've been working with NACFE, and there's a program out there where they decide to test fleets to see how they're doing with these various different pathway choices, right? Let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so that program, what we have going on this year is we've selected something like 13 vehicles out there that we're going to follow for several weeks, and it's a combination of vehicles running the most advanced diesels out there, and running renewable diesel and or biodiesel. There's some natural gas products out there running both regular natural gas and renewable natural gas, some battery electric vehicles, and then a couple of hydrogen vehicles, hydrogen powered vehicles. These are all Class 8 vehicles, sort of dedicated to longer haul, call it 400 miles a day or longer. So this is the segment of the market we talked about earlier that is probably the hardest to, remove the carbon and that comes from both making and operating the vehicle. And so there's not a clear solution going forward where that whole process is carbon free. And so as a result of that, there's a lot of different technologies that are in process of being developed. And we're going to look at each one of those and try and report on what's the good news, what's the bad news, how are those all faring as we go forward. So
what are the metrics you're looking at for those 13 vehicles?
So we're looking at comparing things like miles per gallon or kilowatt hours per mile in electric case, electric vehicle case, miles per kilogram of hydrogen on hydrogen powered vehicle. How do we compare those from a mileage standpoint? How do they operate in an operation where they have to go 400 miles a day? How often do you have to refuel? How long does that take? All of those kinds of things. What does it take to make that all work?
I assume the hydrogen is a hydrogen ICE engine. It's an internal combustion engine for hydrogen.
The ones that we're looking at this year are all the two that we have are two fuel cell vehicles, and they are they're using compressed hydrogen as opposed to liquefied hydrogen. There's lots of alternatives out there with hydrogen yet, but those particular vehicles are compressed hydrogen and a fuel cell. So the internal combustion engines,
vehicle.
well, it's basically a hybrid electric vehicle. Yes, it's electric drive. It gets its power from the hydrogen fuel cell, but it also has batteries on it to take care of the transient operation, accelerating from a stop sign and what have you. So as a result of that, they have both battery electric motor driven and the fuel cell to supply the electricity to the batteries. So
there's a lot of talk about hydrogen. I guess the real question with hydrogen is the like anything else, it needs an infrastructure to deliver the fuel at scale. You also have to consider how you're sourcing your hydrogen, because there's green hydrogen and gray hydrogen and just not very good hydrogen in terms of it comes right from fracking. So there's environmental concerns with that. But it does have some promise under certain applications. And this is a great way of proving its merit, I think, in a sort of a controlled test, right?
Yes, yeah. Well, it's definitely a great way to see where the merits are. It also sees where helps us see where the challenges are, things that need to be solved. And you brought up one of the big ones, of course, is how do you get the hydrogen to the truck, and how do you generate that hydrogen in a way that's the most environmentally conscious in terms of carbon and other pollutants going into the air to make that hydrogen. So, because it's pretty hard to find just loose hydrogen running around, right? So,
well, on one hand, if you make the hydrogen, you can transport it pretty much like you do diesel in a way, right? You can truck it into a particular location and store it, or perhaps deliver it by pipeline. So in that sense, it's more conventional. Maybe you can leverage some of the existing infrastructure to deliver it. I guess the real question is, how much energy does it take to compress the hydrogen? Or if you go in liquefied, how much energy does that take? There's that whole part of the equation we don't necessarily think about.
Yeah, so liquefied, let's take liquefied hydrogen. You can, if you look at how much energy the hydrogen has, just from a molecular standpoint, it takes about a third of that amount of energy to liquefy it. So if it starts as a gas from whatever process you're generating it from, it takes about a third of the total amount of energy in that hydrogen just to get it into the liquid form. It takes about between 10 and 15%, depending on the pressure that you're going to, for gaseous hydrogen. So all that energy that you put in beforehand has to be accounted for as part of the overall equation, right? So, and gaseous hydrogen takes up a ton of space on the vehicle, right? So, just like natural gas does. So, the volume of the tanks that hold the hydrogen has to be much bigger, and of course they have to be pretty robust because if you get in an accident, you don't want those things rupturing, right? Because it's literally rocket fuel, right? So those are things that all have to be considered as part of the process of putting this stuff on a vehicle. Can it be done safely? Absolutely, yes, it can.
We're at 2 minutes before the bottom of the hour. Not sure if we're going to continue past the bottom of the hour break or not. But if we're not, any final thoughts on where you think the future is going with this strange middle that we're in?
Well, yeah, NACFE calls it the messy middle, and we're, I think it's going to be messy for a good number of years here, and it's going to definitely be confusing for the fleets in terms of the products they select and how they run them and how long they run them. But it's also going to be confusing for the manufacturers that make those products on, what are the best ones to concentrate on and where's the profit going to be and all those kinds of things, the things we talked about early on in the discussion. So, it's definitely going to be messy for a while. And
even if the politics reverses in a few years, and we don't know that's the case, it takes 5 to 10 years just to do a reset, right? So we may be seeing, an unsettled situation for maybe 10, 15 years. Is that a fair statement?
Sure, that's a fair statement. And of course, you got to think about the fact that the stock of vehicles that are out there moving freight around, they have, depending on the class and all that kind of stuff, they have a, say 7 to 10 year, 12 year, sometimes 20-year life, right? So the vehicles made today, a bunch of them are still going to be running at 15 years. So, that transition takes a very long time in the trucking industry because, they're capital assets. You want them to last a very long time, and you want to be able to make money with those assets by moving freight around and what have you. So
just to wrap up some of the final thoughts, we talked about a number of different technology pathways. We talked a little bit about hydrogen, talked about NACFE's testing 13 vehicles that are going to be measuring different metrics on how these alternative powertrains perform in the real world under fleet conditions. Do you see any other technologies emerging in the next several years that could be a big player in the future of trucking? We talked about hydrogen, talked about battery electric. What about renewable diesel?
Renewable diesel is a really great alternative, frankly. The hard part of renewable diesel is that this country consumes about 40 billion gallons or so, 45 billion gallons of diesel fuel a year. And right now, the renewable diesel total production is way less than 10 billion. So the point is that having enough supply to supply all vehicles out there is not even realistic, frankly. So the problem is figuring out what vehicles might use that. It's a great alternative in terms of the environmental improvement that you can get. The bad news is it's pretty hard to get your paws on enough of it to make a huge difference. In terms of newer technologies coming out, I mean, you and I have had discussions about the battery technology and the evolution of battery technology, and that is going to continue to happen, although the strides on that are going to, they're a little bit slower, and it's going to take a while for those to get there, whether that's solid state batteries or improved performance from the NMC or lithium ion phosphate batteries that are out there. There are some new technologies where people are working on things like liquid fuels that carry hydrogen and then separating the hydrogen from the fuel in such a way that it can be used in an internal combustion engine or a fuel cell. So you might use, say, ethanol, which is pretty rich in hydrogen, and separate the hydrogen off of it and use that in a vehicle. Or there are other compounds like that are rich in hydrogen that are liquids so that you can store them on the vehicle as a liquid, but you use the hydrogen part of it for the propulsion. So, those are things that are under development. They're not they're not 5 years out, though. They're 10 or 15 years out as opposed to right now. So
well,
I don't know if that
political
helps or
climate,
not.
given the political climate, that might be just about the right time frame. It certainly seems like one size is not going to fit all anytime soon when it comes to alternative powertrains going forward. Kevin, I think that's about all the time we have for the segment. Next week will be our 1,000th show. That's on Wednesday, August 6th, right here on RadioNemo.com. Looking forward to that. And looking forward to having you back, Kevin. That was a great segment. Always interesting to hear the different advances that are coming down the pipe. And we're really interested to hear what the results of the NACFE trials are going to be for those 13 vehicles. When you get the data, we'd love to have you back on the program. We can talk about that in greater detail. With that, I'm going to kick it back to Jimmy Mack down in Texas.